What is going on, everybody? So in today's video, I'm going to talk to you guys in terms of giving you guys transparency on the difference between traditional and digital. All right, so the traditional side, the digital side, when it comes down to art, and my opinion in terms of the pros and cons between the two. So you guys can see the adjacency between the left. That's my traditional aspect of using a ballpoint pen, right? So I kind of stylize it where one half is a render and the other half I make it a black and white. So in case you don't know what a ballpoint pen is literally what you could grab in Staples or any 99-cent store. So it's the cheapest art supply you can possibly get, right? It's literally not even really considered art supply. It's literally just one of those like office or school supplies that is a default to have, right? So you got all this stuff here, which is traditional, right? And then the digital aspect, that's more of a multimedia. So I use mainly the Adobe suite, which is a Photoshop for the sketch, and then the vector graphic is on Illustrator, and then the lighting is on Premiere. I know it's all over the place. That's my methodology. You could technically do everything on Photoshop. It's just that's just my way of executing the art projects. So let's talk about the pros and cons of traditional, and then I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of digital. All right, so let's start off with traditional, which is right here. All right, the pros and cons of traditional. So this is all in my sketchbook. So when it comes down to it, right, I have it right here so I can show you guys right over here. This is the actual version of it, right? Actual version that I took a picture of. Ballpoint pen. So the pros of traditional is that you are directly drawing it onto the canvas. So it is just something that you are used to from elementary or preschool onwards to later on in your life. So it's that authentic human connection you have between the pen and the paper, no pun intended, right? You put in the pen to the paper. Another pro is that you are, with that in mind, you're also having that actual connection with the canvas. Even if you are a tattoo artist, you're tattooing someone and they are a canvas. So you are seeing it through the process, right? So you kind of get that tangibility because of that, with the instant gratification of building it, right? So those are one of the pros. Also, maybe I'm just being really biased here. Obviously, all this is being biased. It's just my opinion. I get more of a satisfaction when I complete a traditional artwork compared to digital. For some reason, digital, there's always a disconnect because it's all on the computer. So it's the tangibility is not connected at all, right? That's just my opinion on that, right? Another pro is that, especially with a ballpoint pen specifically, because I'm talking about that in that aspect, and even if you're using acrylic or whether it's wet media or dry media, you learn more of real artistic fundamental techniques that gives you more credibility when you're able to fix things in that real environment, because you're dealing with a real canvas. Unlike digital, you can always edit, undo. You have so much more flexibility of playing with layers, playing with masking and things of that nature in order to get exactly what you want. And sometimes with that great power comes great responsibility. I mean, my uncle told me that. His name is Ben or whatever. So it gives you that notion of you have almost too much flexibility. Sometimes you need that limitation. That's why I love drawing with a ballpoint pen from start to finish, because you're able to like legit make a mistake and there's no turning back. So I never look at it as a mistake. I look at it like everything is a worked upon work in progress. you know. But when you work on something digital, it's like you just don't really care, because if you mess up, it's like whatever, edit, undo, step backwards, whatever, or trash it, start a new one, right? So those are one of the biggest things when it comes down to the pros of traditional. So let's talk about the cons of traditional, which is, of course, once it's there, it's there. You can't really, like, once it's like it's down like this, let's say, for example, the coloring aspect of it. What if you put a color that you decided later on, like, dang, I wish I didn't use red, I should have used green, I should have used yellow, whatever color it is, you can't undo it, right? Especially if you color it with Copic markers, color pencils, or let's say with wet media, Copic markers, or acrylic, oil painting, watercolor. You can't undo the color. Once it's there, it is permanent, right? Unless you use acrylic or oil, where you can always layer it up. You gotta layer it up. You gotta kind of put another color and some other color that cannot blend with the color you have to try to mix it and fix it up. So there's more labor of fixing colors and things of that nature of the rendering, compared to a digital painting where you can just easily erase the texture of it and replace it with a new one. So those are one of the cons with traditional. And also scale, right? Because like, you could work on a large scale of something that's digital and it still doesn't feel like a large scale, depending on how much detail you're going into it, right? And then you can also like blow it up into a large format print. But traditional, it's a canvas. It could be literally a mural. If I'm even saying the word properly, a mural. I can't even say the word properly. Large canvas, let's put it that way. So with a large canvas, that's a lot of labor. You know, I got a few 18 by 24 ballpoint pen drawings, and trust me, that is a lot of work. So there's a lot of physicality to that, even more than digital, when it comes to a large scale. But don't make no mistake, digital can be very taxing as well, just depending on your methodology. And the way I create all these vector graphics, the method behind the madness is madness, and it is very, very tedious. But there's a difference between that and you can't compare that to like a humongous canvas where you gotta stand up as a mural. Mural, you know what I mean, mural paintings, and you gotta stand up and like legit climb up a ladder and work on the render. Like, there's no comparison between that and me just being in the comfort of my own home, working on the computer or on a laptop. So those to me are the pros and cons when it comes down to traditional. So let's talk about digital. All right, digital, and let's talk about this, right? So this is the most recent design I've done, and you guys can see from here, from the beginning to the end, how it developed, right? Because I showed that on the channel a few videos ago. So from this, all with Photoshop, right? And that's what I mean by the method behind the madness. It takes time, but the pros when it comes down to digital is that you're able to always edit, undo. It's so easy to just fix it. You lower down the opacity of the eraser tool, or use a pale elastic tool, right? You just use a pale elastic tool on Photoshop and just boom, delete. That's it. That's all it takes. But if you was drawing with a pencil, you gotta get the eraser and just scrub, which could then probably, if you erase it too much, you could then affect the canvas itself. Imagine if you're a tattoo artist and you made a mistake. It's like, man, that's a human being that you're working on, and then they have to go through all that pain and torture because you're like scrubbing it hard trying to fix it, you know. And that's the difference between like traditional aspect and whether it's a living canvas or just regular canvas. Regardless, it's the integrity of constantly fixing it manually, whereas digital, you don't gotta worry about that. Just hit pale elastic tool, gone. Or let's say in terms of coloring, right? So let's get to the coloring aspect. And before I even get to the color aspect, this is just all, I have to literally, after the sketch right here, right? And that's the one thing that is a back and forth between traditional and digital, because this is all digital, right? But I still move as if this is traditional. So many people think that this sketch was done with a pencil. It's like, no, this is a lowered down opacity with the Wacom tablet on Photoshop. So you guys can see that there's texture there because I'm still trying to figure it out. It's still sketchy, no pun intended. And then here is when things are more refined because I'm using a mouse on Illustrator, using a pen tool. So now everything becomes very, very sharp and clean, which then leads to this, right? And then you guys see the finished product, which is this one over here. So let's talk about it, right? Let's talk about it. So yeah, so when it comes down to the coloring, I have to admit, these are the pros with digital. Coloring is so much easier because you just click it and the colors are within a millisecond. Traditional, you gotta manually fill in the color. Just like how you gotta manually put in the render, you gotta manually fill in the color. At the same token, with digital, since this is a vector graphic, I have to manually use the mouse, which is using a pen tool on the program, every single light and shadow of the color and positioning. So that can be very, very tedious. In fact, it is very, very tedious. Hence the reason why this took me a couple of days, like 5 days to complete. Whereas traditional, that's all in one go. As in, I just hit record, end record. Sometimes it could take an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, sometimes at most 3 hours in one go. Because the subject matter is just the face and then the bust. A bust is just like head to shoulder. It's not like this where it's almost the entirety of, it's telling a story. It's not a whole full-blown composition scenery type of illustration. When it's digital, the traditional aspect is on my sketchbook, which is pretty small, right? So I emphasize on just the head and shoulder alone, which is considered a bust. Just doing from here to here is a bust. So anyway, going back to what I was saying about the coloring aspect of it, it's easy, you know, because once you add everything as far as the pen tool placement, like I showed you right over here, once you add the pen tool, the most tedious part right here, then you just selectively trying to figure out where you're gonna add the placements as far as the colors. Once the color is there, then I play around with the Gaussian blur effects with the drop shadow to create those luminescent colors underneath the squares and things of that nature, right? So coloring, those are the pros when it comes down to digital. So let's talk about the cons with digital. I pretty much said it before, I'll say it again. With my method behind the madness, I just don't feel like what I just said with traditional. I still feel like there's a disconnect. Like I've made this, but I don't feel like I made this. Like compared to traditional, it's tangible. Like all of this here is tangible, you know, like I physically made this. This is real. I can touch it. I feel it. I started from an empty canvas and then I turn it into this. That's the connection you have with traditional. Digital, no. You really don't, mainly because you gotta rely on the print. And that's also can be a pro as well, right? I could print this to be as small as this or as big as the whole entire wall of this section in my living room easily, because it's a vector graphic and vector graphics can be blown to any type of size you want, right? Any size. So compared to traditional, you can't really do that. You have to make it a certain size, right? You have to manually make it a certain size. So that's how I kind of see like the pros and cons. Now, of course, you should be able to be good at both of them, right? Be good at both of them. Now, if you got clients and they like you for traditional more than digital, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And find whatever you find more fun to make. Let's say if you're just doing it as a hobby, you're not trying to make a living out of it, just lean towards whatever you find more fun. But overall, I like doing both, but they're not the same. They're not. Whenever I make something digital, it just feels more like it's more tedious at hand with digital, which is what you see here. Takes days to make, and I'm trying to go all out with it because it takes days to make it. You know, so I look at digital as more of a complete, polished, commercial, professional work of art. And traditional is that too, right? Professionally, because of understanding lights and shadows. However, I still, for me, right, I'll rather take days making something like this where I can make it in different formats. I could put it on a t-shirt. I could put it on a large print format, right? But traditional, it just doesn't really come out as good when you gotta take a high-res picture with your camera, you know, take a picture of your camera from a certain angle and then mass produce it. It just doesn't look as clean. Honestly, it don't look as clean. So those to me are the pros and cons. But let me actually minimize this, and then go back to, there we go, right here, right? So overall, this is what I'll say, right? As far as traditional, I like doing traditional as far as just like making sketches and, you know, from time to time make a finished full-blown illustration. I don't prefer to do full-blown illustrations traditional. It's just so much work in terms of the hands, because you gotta really grind. That's another thing I want to say too. Like with this pen, you guys can see that's what a ballpoint pen. I know some people say, yo, you can use a different medium. That's my method behind the madness. So I'm torturing myself doing that. But yeah, like that is a grind. Like you just trying to get that into a solid black. Whereas digital, you don't gotta worry about that. Hit the selection of black and presto, it is filled in. All you gotta do is just deal with the tedious aspect of using a pen tool just to create that shape, and then boom, it's filled in. You're done. So that's the back and forth. So when it comes down to just sketching and just relaxing, making something, just working on the bust, like I said, from head to shoulder, definitely traditional all the way. If I want to make a full-blown scenery type of dramatic foreshortening digital illustration, right, I go for digital, obviously. So I like the fact that there's a contrast between the two in terms of my style, and I like to keep it that way. You know, I don't like to try to blend the two, because then it could just look all over the place. I used to do that when I didn't really know how to use Photoshop and Illustrator back then. I used to just draw traditional and then scan it and then just fill in the colors. I don't really do that anymore. I like to just keep them separate. But yeah, what do you guys think in the comment section below? Which one do you guys prefer? As if you are an artist, which one do you prefer, digital or traditional? And just judging by the imagery here, which one do you guys prefer? The left, which is traditional, and the right is digital, right? So let me know down below those suggestions of different drawings you guys want me to do in the future, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.